How did I send that to Danielle?
Well, help. Are we ready? Hold on.
All right. We're good? Welcome to the June 11th, 2025 CAPC Workshop. I'm Steve Holofield, Chair. This is a workshop, not a meeting, so we'll not be making any decisions about anything. We have two things on our agenda, Air DNA and budget review. So, Mike, we're going to start with the Air DNA. I know we have a person on our monitor. Go ahead.
Okay, this is kind of one of Ty's things, and he's been working with Amanda at Air DNA. So, Ty, it's kind of for you to open it up.
All right. I did go through the demo with Amanda before in quite a bit of detail and was very impressed. Amanda, I'd like to kind of go through just a short demo just so everyone can see what you showed me before.
Definitely.
What it offers.
Yeah. So to kind of give backstory as well before we get started, so AirDNA is going to be data and analytics on short-term rentals. So being able to look at both Airbnb and VRBO, what does that mean for DMOs? So having a better understanding of the visitation that comes in through the market and being able to kind of compare that to hotels as well. And so what we do is we're going to be scraping through an API calendar into both Airbnb and VRBO and to see what those reservations look like. What are they booking for? How far in advance are they booking? And then also being able to project future data as well. And this helps also benchmark towards other destinations that you'd also want to see for event success and how they are also looking in the market. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen. Let me just make sure I'm where I need to be. Perfect. All right. So looking at this, you're going to be able to see the dashboard, and everything is going to be customized to our client. And so I have just the city limits in here, and always at the top, you're going to get all the main metrics. So year over year, supply, demand, revenue, occupancy, nightly rates, and then length of stay and booking leading time, pacing, which will be that 6 months future looking data, market comparison, and then more or less just a data dump. So always at the top, you're going to have the most recent month that just finished, and you're going to see those metrics. So revenue, ADR, RevPAR, available listings, booked listings, and occupancy rate. And what it's going to do is see where you are currently to where you were at this time last year. So it looks like in the month of May, 1.1 million in revenue from just the short-term rentals. And as you see here, there's a little spot for you to expand. And when you expand, you're going to get all the historical data going back to 2014. So it doesn't matter when you sign on, you will always have all of that historical data, which is really helpful. And then as you go down, a couple different metrics, being able to see year over year. So if you wanted to see it by revenue or occupancy or the amount of available listings that you've had in the market, this is a way to be able to see that. So let's say available listings, for example. And then we can so seeing that in 2024, there was 426, and that's going to be that average within that year. And then you can drill down a particular month if you want to go further into that and say, I want to compare February 2025 to 2024 to 2022, or 2023, there we go. But it gives you that way to do that. And then kind of from there, very high level metrics, from what you would see very similar to a hotel report. So understanding again what that supply looks like. And then again, all the historical data going back to 2015 here. And then any of these can also be exported. I don't know if anybody loves the data and wants to dive into it, but you have the ability to if you want to. From there, available listings by bedroom and also day of week. So looking at Eureka, for example, you're going to see that there's a lot of one bedrooms. Studio one bedrooms are going to be the highest, and you can see that the 2 to 6 aren't going to be as big in the market as those hotel comparisons. Revenue is going to be next, so being able to see revenue on a month-by-month basis and then also annually, and then revenue by bedroom and day of week. I just want to stop. Are there any questions so far? I know I'm kind of running through this a little quickly, but
Nope. Anybody have any questions?
We're good.
Okay, awesome. And then from there, again, occupancy. So it's being able to see occupancy month over month, and then also by bedroom and day of week. So for example, you can see here, very weekend heavy destination, and a lot of people want to try and find ways to bring people in on those shoulder days, any sort of events or things. And so this is going to be able to kind of track that and show what can you do to bring more people in. And then are there any hoteliers on the board?
There are.
There are?
Yes.
Okay. The reason being said, I think the next thing that I'm going to show you is really helpful because I've heard quite often recently that hotel occupancy has been down and they're trying to understand why exactly. And so there's a way here where you can check a studio, 1 bedroom, which would be a hotel comparison, an entire place, and to see what that average daily rate is going to look like. And so from there, being able to share that and saying, hey, is our occupancy down because maybe our prices are too high, and how can we be competitive to the short-term rentals? So this is a really good tool to be able to use that. And then again, you'd also be able to see how that nightly rate is going to change by day of week. All right, and then we're getting into my favorite afterwards. So this is going to be understanding length of stay and booking leading time. So you're going to see here, on average, people are booking around 35.9 days in advance before coming to the destination. And you're going to be able to see that seasonality on a month-by-month basis of how it's going to change. What I think is really important is going to be the blue. And those blue figures is going to be those last minute bookers. So anybody that's going to book between 0 to 6 days before coming to the destination. And on the other end, you're going to have the 91 day plus. And so those are people that are booking over 3 months in advance before coming. And so trying to find that sweet spot, especially with marketing and advertising and campaigns, to see when should we be putting those campaigns out to make sure that we're attracting as many people in as possible. And then also understanding length of stay. So it's 2.4 days here, and you're going to see that around 42%, almost 43% of people are actually staying on average 2 nights there. And so again, that's going to really help, how can I bring them in on a Thursday and then leave on a Sunday rather than just coming in for 2 days. And then from there, it's going to be pacing. So this is going to be that 6 months future looking data. And it's going to be for your market and then any competitive market that you think that you want to benchmark against. So we say on average about 25 competitive markets. And so for example, like I said, this is just a sample, but just to kind of give you an idea. So we can look at listing nights booked. And so what this is going to do is show you where you are currently compared to where you were at this time last year, and to show that percent change. So for example, in the month of June, at this time, as you see here, this was updated last on June 9th. So on June 9th, you had about 1,900 booked listings. Compared to this year, you're at almost 2,600 booked listings. So that percent growth is going to be about 35%. I was going to say, is there anything happening in particular in October? Because those numbers are crazy already.
Oh, yes. Zombie crawl.
Okay. But yeah, so this is going to be a great way to do that. And then, for example, if you wanted to see, what other people are doing, this is I always say it's kind of like creeping on your neighbors in a weird way, but that's exactly what it is. All right. And then market comparison is just a way to kind of break the market down. So if you wanted to be able to look at it by, particular neighborhoods within the city or however the case, there's ways to do that and to see what they look like against one another. And then lastly is going to be a data dump. And so this essentially is going to be your main market, your competitive markets, and all your sub-markets, and you're going to get monthly updates on each of them. So being able to understand what's available, what's the total revenue, the ADR, available listings, so pretty much everything that you saw up at the top for your just main market, but you'd be able to see it for everybody else's as well. Any questions on the Tourism Insights dashboard?
Anybody?
You mentioned, Amanda, at some time ago that eventually you'll be able to move into kind of a daily look at audience count and so forth, and I know that that was something we were really interested in hearing about.
So you said, I'm sorry, I only got a half of that. So looking at what?
Dailies. Being able to go back and take a look, for instance, an event on a weekend, that we'd be able to go ahead and pull that number on a Friday or a Saturday and kind of take a look at, what happened.
Yeah, so what I can do is we have that available right now. I'm just looking to see for particular, I swear all these one at a certain point. There we go. All right, so what you'd be able to see is daily as well. So again, what you would do is being able to select it for a particular period of time, and then being able to look at that year over year. And then again, you'd be able to look at it for your market and then any other market as well. And so then you'd get that revenue, all of those metrics on a day-by-day basis rather than on a monthly basis.
Okay, the second thing, Amanda, is part of, I guess it's part of an add-on with the package, gives us a spreadsheet, kind of in Excel, and that
you want to look at that now?
Extraordinarily comprehensive. Could we take a peek at that, if you can?
Yeah, let's do that. Of course. All right, so I need to stop sharing that and then bring up this one. So this is going to be the property performance data.
Yes.
I know it looks like a lot, and I apologize. It's quite overwhelming with the amount of columns there are. So what it's going to show is where the listings are going to be located within the area. So everything is going to be like a GeoJSON file. You're saying, hey, I want to look at just these particular, just in this particular area. And what you're going to see is if a listing is on either Airbnb or VRBO, along with that, you're going to get the listing title. Is it a house and a cabin, etc.? And then the crucial part about this is those lat longs. And by having a GIS, what you're going to be able to do is overlay that information where those lat longs, and you'll be able to figure out who the property owner is. And from there, being able to reach out and express, hey, we want to make sure there's permits or whatever the case. And so that's going to be that way to do that. But as it keeps going on, it will tell you the member bedrooms, bathrooms, the date it was created. It goes on and on and on forever. And then it also can take you right to that listing URL as well. In addition to that, you'd also receive monthly files on each of the properties. And within those properties, being able to say what that total revenue was for that month, how many days was it booked, how many days was it available. And so that's a way to also see, is somebody putting their house up on the weekend because they're going out of town? Is an investor? What's actually happening? Just so then you can have that better understanding of what that market is made up of.
That's very powerful, Amanda. I guess my last question probably, and you mentioned something about a monthly update, is that basically sweeping the entire geography? So if we were taking a look competitively at a market that's, say, 50 miles away from us, is that update's going to be included within that report?
So within the Excel report, it's only going to be for the city.
Okay.
So, yeah. So you don't have to worry about anything else. It would just be for your city.
Well, we don't need to know everything, but okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? Anybody else have any questions?
I have questions, not necessarily related specifically to the presentation. And Amanda, thank you for this. My name's Heather Wilson. I was, as a marketer, I was doing some research on AirDNA and the probably by now over 500 DMOs that you already serve. And to your point about data, I think it's really important that we have these data points to make a case for investing in AirDNA. There weren't a lot of G2 like scoring or reviews or whatever, but one thing that I wanted to call out that seems like there's been a really good evolution on in the last year and a half was a piece of feedback that your product team worked on. Looks like before AirDNA was more honed in on cosmopolitan and larger cities, and you've really gone into the rural and smaller town space. Could you talk a little bit more about that and how your product team has evolved on that? Because I think that that's important, being that we're a tourist town of 2,200 people, looking at something that perhaps historically people thought was for big cities.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a really great point. And interesting enough, kind of our CEO started AirDNA because he got a short-term rental in Santa Monica. And so they were actually the first place to, have regulations on that. And so I think what it comes down to is, when he started kind of scraping the data, yes, we were going after, the bigger destinations, but I think I've been at AirDNA for about 3 years now, and looking at how much has changed in the last couple of years, and especially with the funding, because I came in during COVID, and realizing that not everybody has those ARPA funds, and those, they're collecting everything as much now, so they're really focused on the revenue aspect and making sure that they are able to collect as much from that tax to keep them afloat and to keep bringing people in. Because it's like, I work with DMOs only, and I see on a day-to-day basis that there's a passion, there's a love for it. And so I think for me, being able to focus on the smaller ones to keep them in business and to pretty much help them in any way possible, that's kind of where I aim, especially when I'm reaching out to people, because there's so many different hidden gems that you wouldn't think about going to, because everyone wants to potentially go to the Miami or the New York. And so it's like, how can you bring people into this, smaller America? And how can you help those marketing efforts, to kind of show those hidden gems? I don't know if I answered your question or kind of went off on a tangent, so I apologize.
Yeah, you did. I'm from Miami, so I understand. And look, I live in Eureka Springs. The next question that I have was, I took a look at some specifics like Green Bay, Chicago, North Lake Tahoe, not just all of Lake Tahoe, and Cape May County in New Jersey, and a lot of them had some really specific business uses and case uses. Could you call out any, I'll give you a for instance, winter, right? They were saying, hey, business like Green Bay, people are still coming here in the winter. Businesses, you need to be open year-round. That kind of data for us, historically, a lot of our businesses close in the winter. This could be super helpful. Are there any other data points that you could think of that would be helpful for our businesses?
I was going to say that's always number one, especially when showing the dashboard. And there's a lot of places that still are closed on Monday, Tuesday within the city, because they're realizing, not as many people are coming into town. And then they kind of take a step back, see the data, and they're like, oh my goodness, if we saw people coming in, are they potentially going to the next town? Are they getting our tax dollars? What can we do to actually drive in that traffic? I think that one's always really big. I think also just looking at it from the event success too, and being able to look at what other destinations are doing, and you're noticing, from the pacing especially, and saying, okay, in October, for example, there's expecting to be 65%, growth from last year. And to be able to kind of put that into a perspective of, okay, what exactly are they doing and what can we implement in our town to bring those people here rather than going somewhere else? Do they have a blueberry festival, or is it, whatever the case? And so being able to utilize that, I think, is really helpful. And then I would also say from the property performance, the Excel sheet that's still up there, we don't need that anymore. But being able to look at the property performance data, we've had, Visit Owensboro in Kentucky, for example, had an event where they brought everybody that was a short-term rental host in. So this was a really nice way to have, travel guides in the house, promote them on the website, whatever the case, to actually help them being like, they're not against you, we want to work with you. We just had no way of actually getting in contact with you, rather than driving around and knocking on everyone's door. Hey, are you a short-term rental? Okay, are you operating here? And then being able to utilize it that way.
Thank you.
Of course.
All right. Anybody else? All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. We appreciate your time.
Yeah. Have a good evening.
You
Okay.
too.
You
Bye.
too.
We have in our audience one of the many people back there, Jack Moyer, and we had a conversation about what our agenda was for today, and he mentioned he had used AirDNA, and I asked him, would you come up and tell us your experience?
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Jack.
You want to come up here and sit with us?
Well, I don't know. It's so far up there.
It's a long walk.
I like that it's a meeting and we can do that. Or it's a workshop, rather.
Here's a fun fact. I've lived here for 30 years. I've never sat on a commission.
Really?
I've never sat, yeah. There you go. Yeah, I've used AirDNA primarily to, Rochelle and I, when we set up Loblolly Pines, subscribed to AirDNA. It's super easy to, I mean, it just depends on what you want to get out of it. But we paced the market, set rate, developed a comp set, and just sort of followed along. We also looked at, we had a wider set that we were looking at. But the tool works fine. I mean, I guess it just depends on what you're looking to get out of it. But it was very helpful for us to position ourselves within the market and do so competitively. We don't use it anymore just because we've sort of established that customer base and trending. So, anyways, but happy to answer any questions. But
Do you have any questions or anything else you want to talk about, overview, or?
The only other question that I would have is maybe for Mike is Amanda mentioned, there's that historic data and that can help not only help set benchmarks for the CAPC, but is this data that we could share to say, hey, I know businesses they have this, but they're not always necessarily going into the data or knowing how to use it to say, hey, here's where we were last year. This is about where you might want to aim for next year. Is that something that we might do to help?
I say with probably 95% of it, yes. There's a lot of comprehensive data that gives us a benchmark on evaluating, for instance, and more importantly, probably events. That's why it's the question about the day-to-day analyses. Being able to go back and take a look 2 years, a year, and so forth, and see those numbers and how we see the increase, whether it's gone up or it's gone down, and it helps us, I think, also in terms of even funding with our market support, whether or not a particular event has had its place, and is it continuing to do what it should be doing. So I think that, again, 95% of that data I think is very shareable. There is some data in there that would probably preclude us from not being, it's proprietary data.
Sure.
And it also it kind of digs into the taxation too as well, so we have to be somewhat careful there. But there's so much data in there that I think we could use for the benefit of the community as a whole to suggest that this is a big darn deal, and you need to maybe get your arms wrapped around it as well. So any event that's got some historical value to it, that's a good thing for us to be able to share out to the public.
Great.
Thanks.
If I remember right, she said she can go back to like 2015. Is that right?
I think she said 14.
So it's like that. So the other sharing part, what I see, can we share some kind of data with the city? I see on our sample here that we have narrowed down to the exact property where everything is coming down. Yeah. So can we go back and use that data and talk to the city clerk and say, hey, can you check where we're at with the business license? Do they have an active business license or not? Are we legally able to do that, or are we in a gray zone? Or that would be an interesting part to start with.
Yeah, and without getting really technically deep into it, the answer to your question is yes. We have been trying to work in some concert with our planning commission because of the sale of properties and so forth that go back and forth, and there's always the question whether or not they paid up their taxes and so forth. And that's certainly come up more than once in the past several months. And what we want to be able to do is to say that, we've got intel that we can share, which is basically they have either satisfied, what they were supposed to do in their filings, or they haven't. That's all we really can say. But on the same token, that's information that we can ask, and we've done this a couple of times. We will talk to Ida at City Hall and say, does so-and-so have a license currently? Are they coming into town as a business? We've noticed a new food truck out here in the weeds. Have they come in to get a permit? Then we know these things, and we can share that data back and forth. But it's based upon just, have they licensed themselves? Do they have an A&P permit? Those types of things.
I mean, like, those data, what she showed were real data, I'm assuming. So I saw $1.1 million for April. Well, that's $33,000 for the CAPC taxes, if this is all city, or if those businesses all are within the city limits, of course. But Airbnb doesn't pay us, right, so far. Now, we have the contract now, but there's a lot of money on the line we didn't have before.
They do pay us, Robert.
But now we have something we can actually kind of compare and see where we're at. Are the collections, what they're giving us, are they kind of realistic to what actually was collected? And of course, I'm sure there are maybe some properties, they actually file a report with us and maybe even pay directly with us. I don't know if all Airbnb have the same contract, that Airbnb will collect the money and then they should pay us. For instance, the contract what I have with Booking.com, for example, or Expedia, the guest pays at the hotel, and then I pay the commission on. They invoice me once a month, and then I pay the commission to them. But all the money goes through my business, and of course then in my reporting. It's all included. And I don't know if we have that with Airbnbs as well, or maybe they don't even have that option, I don't know. So the money goes all through the home away company.
That's a tricky question.
Jack, you have experience both ways here.
The answer for Airbnb is simple. Airbnb collects and submits all payments. So that's easy. It's much. Ty and I had a conversation this week. It gets much trickier with VRBO, which is a blend depending on your payment selection, and then it gets weird with Expedia, who also offers now a pay at the property or Expedia Pay, and now Booking.com is getting into that too. So that I think will be complex. As you move forward, but with legislation that's changed in California, which requires full disclosure of all end pricing payment, I think you're going to see that that's going to move a little bit. But Airbnb, you guys should be in good shape and maybe great shape, because I think you may even be receiving collections for the county and not just city limits. So you may be receiving more money than you would expect. And VRBO is that blend, but it sounds like you guys have taken care of collections with VRBO. So people that are paying VRBO directly, you should be able to get those submissions. And then properties like Robert and myself that we collect on property, we still have to submit A&P taxes. I did want to say one other thing, and I'm sorry I didn't mention it, Steve. This would be probably the only tool that you could get legitimate occupancy tracking for the destination. The other options for hotel tracking is not accurate for our destination because of the independent mix of the property. And I'm not sure how AirDNA collects and reports the data of the whole, but for example, Loblolly Pines, when we were on there, it wasn't 100% accurate, but it was pretty close to what my collection blend was. And of course, we're an Airbnb, we're a VRBO, Booking.com, Expedia, and Self-Collect. Yet they could represent that full revenue and occupancy period. So their tools are pretty sophisticated, not perfect, but would give at least the CAPC a gauge of occupancy and room rate that probably no other tool would have.
I mean, what we have currently is a blind flight You know, like whatever money comes in from those sources, we don't know.
Sure.
We have no way to compare it or, and the other thing, what I think is interesting, eventually if we go that way, if we have that data, we can compare it to like the regular hotels and all the places who send us the reporting directly. And then we can kind of see where's where's actually Eureka Springs developing into it? Is it like, we had that conversation on the last meeting, 1,700 Airbnb in Carroll County. I mean, 1,700, it's like, that's an insane amount when you compare that we're like less than 30,000 people in that county. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to kind of have an idea where's the weight, you know, like are more people staying in a hotel, or what kind of a trend are people going to? Is it like the studio thing, or are they renting houses, or? And I think that's a very important information for the town itself also.
No. Well, remember, every listing is not every property. So like Loblolly, you know, I might have 11 of our units on Airbnb. That's 11 for AirDNA, not one. Mm-hmm. So that's where it skews a little bit.
All right, any other questions? I'll remind David and Colin to watch this workshop so we can vote on it at the 25th meeting. So, okay.
Well, I guess one question we have not heard yet, or one answer, were you able to negotiate a little bit on the pricing or on the conditions? Or I know that was one part of it. We could ask Jack how much he paid, you know, maybe then we have an idea.
I think the properties pay a little bit less than the DMOs. I'm sure you guys are aware of how this game's played by now.
Yeah.
And it's a one-year contract, right? With, I think, make up this year, then have to buy it next year or something.
Right, so they would let us, it's $900 a month, basically. So they would let us pay out the rest of this year when we start, and then do a full year next year.
Right. But we don't have to sign like a 5-year contract or anything like that. So it's not like a 5-year contract. We can, after a year or next year, we can always drop it if we don't feel like it's useful. So
Correct.
So it's like, what was it, 10,000 a year, or what is the exact amount?
10,800.
10,800 for like 12 months period. Okay.
I did not pay $10,000.
we want the Jack Moyer discount.
No.
When you break it down monthly, I think it's a really competitive cost for the tool.
Right. And if I understand right, I mean, like, so you, with that tool, you can analyze on your own, or every time you have to go through Amanda and ask her, can you send me that sheet, or you can use that tool the way you want to use it, right?
It's a dashboard, and you can manipulate it however you want. You have access to it.
Right, but you can only use it for Eureka Springs.
Well, it's the dashboard. The dashboard data is set up for Eureka Springs, but you can compare to up to 25 markets that they set up for you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so you can tell them which ones you want. Mm-hmm. Let's say you want to see what is Bentonville doing, or Little Rock, or so, and then you can compare that.
You can have up to 25 comparison markets.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Anything else? Moving on to then our next and final budget review. Ty.
All right, I've given you each copies of a worksheet to look at, and what I've done is broken out each section of the P&L so you can look at each section at a time and analyze each one.
You won't see this on the screen. I'm sorry.
I was looking at the picture.
We'll get your
Yeah,
copy.
there's no way we could get this on screen. The reason that I'm asking is I've had about 6 different people write me saying that we used to show budgets on screen during meetings, and we haven't in a long time. And just for transparency for the community,
Okay.
I said I'd ask if we could get it up on screen going forward.
Okay, we'll work on that.
You know how to do that, Ty?
Well, I think they have to do it from back there.
We can do it. It takes
Okay.
quite a bit of time to do this
Okay.
in the way this has been put together. And this is a good format that Ty basically has been manipulating for the past 48 hours. So it's a complex task.
The first section is the collection income. I've got the first column is what was actually collected, and I did this based on April because I have financials for May are not completed and approved, so I did it through April. So the actual collections for January through April were $493,000 with a budget of $2,106,000. So the next column shows the remaining balance left to meet that budget. There's 8 remaining months in the year, so the average income collections for each of these 8 remaining months to meet the budget is $201,000. The average monthly collections for the same period last year was $190,000. So that's basically a 6% increase over last year for the rest of the year. The next section is other income. It's basically on track, except for we originally planned on trying to do some in-house concerts where we would collect the income on the tickets for that. It's kind of looking like we're not going to do as many as we planned, and so we reduced that income. And then interest income was actually, I think, a little under budgeted, and so we'll probably make a little bit more on interest income. Everything else is on track. The next section is media placement. The only really item of note there is the marketing support funds. As of today, we have an expense balance of $65,000 with a budget of $75,000. So just under $10,000 is remaining for the year. Next section is ad production. There's nothing unusual there. Everything is on track. Next section is special events. The only really item of note there is the holiday events budget. We'd budgeted $40,000, but it ended up most of the expenses for the New Year's Eve and Christmas last year ended up being paid this year. So that $34,000 is actually almost all of it is for the actual last year's event, but it was paid this year. So, I mean, but the same thing could happen next year where you're paying in the next year's budget for this year.
So we technically still have the 40,000 available.
Well,
On the cash basis, no.
yeah, exactly. So that's really the only item of note there. In group sales, everything is on track there. Auditorium operations.
Just a minute.
Yep.
So in group sales, when we hired a group salesperson, it was kind of on the basis that they can prove that what they bring in at least pays their salary. So again, I want to remind folks, at the end of the year, I'd like to see a presentation that says this is what they brought in and justify having a staff person. Okay.
All right, auditorium operations. Everything is on track except the utilities might be a little under budgeted. We had some air conditioning issues earlier this year, and so we're working through that, and it caused our utility bills to be higher. So we'll have to just kind of watch that one.
And for next year, we're one of the few A&P organizations in the state or the country that has an antique building to maintain. It's like that's our burden, and our joy is the same thing here. But for next, we really want to look at is there any way of projecting or predicting any kind of repairs, major expenses for next year, so we can deal with that with the budget as well. So
right, and I did I just kind of looked at it because I was curious, and the odd does not make us a lot of money.
no.
So we're budgeting about $70,000 in income for the year. but we're budgeting almost $20,000 in expenses. So that's a huge burden on us just to
Does that
run the...
does that include repairs and?
No, that's just the cost
Utilities.
that's in the budget. That's the budget
Right.
cost. So that's not anything extra, which we need a new heat and air unit,
Right.
which is...
A new roof, heat and
Right.
air.
And so I'm not sure,
Yeah.
I haven't been here very long, so I'm not sure exactly how we inherited $250,000 in odd costs that we pay with CAPC money. I'm not sure how that happened.
You don't want to ask.
Yeah, that's a long-standing thing, like the.
So, I mean, but if you look at income, the net income less, with the expenses, that's $250,000 that of our budget that we're responsible for just because. So that's.
Yeah, and I'm sure the people in the community would say, is there any way that the odd could pay for itself? Is enough shows coming in? Is there enough, rentals and stuff to say then the odd could break even? But I don't think that.
The answer to the question really is no.
Yeah.
Because for every show that we put on, just the human capital expense is way up there. We're talking labor, people, personnel, security, all those things that go into just the infrastructure of opening that door to let people come through with a $50 ticket. And, we just have to be realistic about the fact that we're not a performance venue that can do a $150 ticket, for instance. That won't work. It hasn't worked since Willie. And Willie was the only one that brought in a $130 ticket, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So I think where we're at right now is we have to just be realistic. We have 986 seats. What can we max out at? And then that is our income for concerts. On the other hand, it's the day-to-day that really becomes a factor. Multiple meetings in the auditorium from the city, the use of the facility for nonprofit organizations that have been grandfathered in for one reason or the other. And then just literally, the time and the labor that goes into, keeping a facility open 7 days a week.
Right.
So there is that.
And we are good stewards of a historic landmark, too.
Absolutely.
If everybody would pay a rent who uses the facility, that would help. The city council uses the auditorium we pay for. So technically, the city council should pay a rent to CAPC for using the facility.
The city owns the building, Robert.
We have the whole burden of that building.
Now, we get free rent, don't you see?
Yeah,
That's some expensive
we would
rent.
be happy to get rid of it, but this is just the city who does that forever, just put the burden on us.
I think the CAPC could vote to move out of the odd. We'll give it back to the city and say, y'all can have it. I don't think so. Moving on.
All right. The last section is admin. We think that we increased our internet expense because we went to the fiber optic cable, so we're probably going to be a little under budgeted on that. And then we had agreed to give the park $44,000 for the park renovation and 10 for maps, and that's what was in the 54. And then we ended up giving them 10 more for the park renovation. So we're probably going to be short there.
Wait, what?
On the bottom,
I'm sorry. So we gave 54, then 10 for brochures, and another 10 to park?
yeah, so we get 64 for the park and maps.
I thought it was just 54. Didn't we have this conversation with Sam?
Initially, the budget for parks was 44, or whatever it was. We added 10,000 in to go ahead and help with the infrastructure over the Basin Spring Park.
Right.
We also had budgeted 10 for the maps and also 10 for the Jamboree or 4th of July. So really what we're looking at is $75,000.
Okay.
And then, because we have a negative budget this year, I just added at the very bottom section, any line item that was over a $10,000 change between what was actually spent last year and the budget for 2025. And that shows kind of what went up and down to show why we had that deficit.
chamber postage.
Yeah, we had agreed to pay $20,000 for the chamber postage that we didn't pay last year.
Okay, any questions for anybody? Jack, did you want to say anything?
I have a couple of things I would love to share with the commission if that works, but
You want to do it now, or
whatever the chair tells me to do.
what do you think, Ty? Keep going, or you want it?
Or I'm good on my end if you don't have any questions about it.
You all done? Okay. Take it away.
Well, thank you for allowing me to share some thoughts. I brought a couple of handouts that I wanted to mainly just give you an update on some of the events that we've done recently, and share some thoughts on something that to the commission that's been playing on me as you guys get into your budget process and planning. So the first thing I think actually is going to prove itself to be sort of relevant. That's this document right here. This is the Blues profit and loss. It's not a tie profit and loss. It's a working document. But I thought you guys would find it interesting to produce a six-figure festival, and Blues is going to be about a $100,000 festival, and how that revenue stream comes in. So ticket sales came out to be $63,850 all told, $63,850. You can go through these different lines. I won't do that for time, but I did provide it for you. Just sort of, I'd appreciate you guys sort of keeping it a little close to the vest. A couple other things that are here. The total expense of the festival, $80,000. The total cost of the entertainment, about $52,000. So you can see, you know, it's a pretty pricey deal to produce entertainment, and I think the thing to keep in mind is, you know, what is the whole value of these festivals and events, and you know, it's unrealistic to think that people, whether Larry's producing a show or we're producing a festival, are gonna be wildly or even somewhat profitable on those events. So I think, and Mike and I, we talk about this a lot, is if we're not going to make money on the event, what are we going to leave folks with? And creating an image of the destination is a real key component. Going into Blues, we talked about we want to be known as a live music destination. And we want to be known as that sort of hip, trendy, free-to-be locale. So I think that has a lot to what we leave folks with. And the promotional value, I think, is really the key component. You know, we get a lot of people who write about it, talk about it, word of mouth it. And that has long legs as far as repeat visitation and just keeping the destination relevant in front of people. So I think you have to look at that when you're investing money. It is, you know, what is the long leave? What is the whole? Because the net profit is not going to be there for these events. Obviously, the next event that we're doing in partnership, and this is a we thing. There's no just me without a we, and there's no we without a me, and that's how we sort of look at things. And New Year's Eve is the next big one. That's going to be a net expenditure on the commission, and if we're going to do that, you know, then we have to make that decision pretty quickly. We're assuming that we're a go. I lend the city our event manager during that time frame, Mary Howes. She does an excellent job. She coordinated Blues Festival with me, and she coordinates the New Year's Eve event for the community. So I think the key element, Blues Festival was also a promotional event to talk about live music and the destination of Eureka Springs, laying heavy on PR. And New Year's Eve is an event that says Eureka's open year-round. and we have to use those and bundle those things together to be successful. So how it factors into your budget conversation is for next year, and I think when you look at your budget, you might want to look at, what are the festivals and what are the events. And Mike and I have talked about it, and I mentioned actually at the commission before, there may be a difference between festival lines and marketing support lines, and certainly the CAPC underwrites Ron's time, underwrites some of the bands that are in the park, and coordinates staff and marketing time, and all that has value. We need to make sure that those things return. So that's just FYI as far as blues and the cost and sort of the reality of producing music in today's environment. I don't think you can look at it from a profitability perspective thinking you're going to keep the auditorium alive by bringing in live music. It's probably unrealistic. You might go the other way, which is more probable. Could I afford to do blues without having 2 hotels that have ancillary revenue? The answer is clearly no. You can do the math. 80 minus 62, I think there is a net, or 62 minus 80 is worse, right? The other thing that I provided for you is these are markers, and I even heard it during Air DNA. Your average lead time is 35, 40 days, whatever. That is a skewed number in Eureka Springs because of what she said. You have so much October that pre-books. I can tell you what the reality is, and I've provided that for you here. Okay, this is a document from my Director of Rooms and Revenue. And people are researching us 90 days out. People are hard researching us 60 and 45 days out, and people are booking within the month for the month. And that's why so many people run up to being vacancy signs on Tuesday and no vacancy signs on Saturday. This is just for the hotels, but you can see she wrote in the past 8 days, booked 149 room nights for the next 10 days and 160 more room nights for the rest of the month. So you booked 309 room nights over 8 days, the first 8 days of June. So it's a crazy tight booking period. And the reason I bring that up is sometimes agencies will talk about, we're setting a table for fall. And although that is important to plan and dream, as far as closing the deal, we have to be relevant today. And, if we are not putting messaging for the summer season today, we're missing a little bit. So you need to sort of be doing both, and we've got to keep the agency to make sure that they know that the booking window, the actual book now button, hits within the month for the month. And that's what reality looks like today in Eureka Springs. The other marker, I'm sorry, I saved up a few things, Steve. Is that okay? Sure. This is a document. We also use some AI tech tools at the properties. This is a program called Ideas. So this is a real life snapshot of what this is probably the Crescent, and I circled a few of you guys because one thing that has happened, and this is a marker for the agency as they plan for next year, and for you guys too, you would catch this using Air DNA, is you'd see that May weekdays and early June have been sluggish coming out of the gate for the last couple of years, and we experienced that same trend again this year. And when we run our business, we're looking for opportunity space. We're looking for when people are traveling, but they're not booking us. And I have long felt that I don't know why people don't come in April. It's beautiful weather, but they don't have a big travel base there. But once schools let out in mid-May and into June, if we were laying the foundation in that 45-day window before that, I think we would see that we would capture some of that travel. So that's just more a marker for in-house staff and for the agency that there is an opportunity space to capture more travel from May 15th to June 15th. And our destination is underperforming other markets during that time frame, where in the fall, we're greatly outperforming. So if you want to enjoy one thing, if you get AirDNA, take a look at Eureka versus Branson in October, and we're crushing them. You know, so shh, don't tell anybody there. So, I mentioned New Year's Eve and allocating funding, and then the last thing I wanted to make sure, this is a much bigger topic, so I'm just laying this foundation if you guys want to talk about this. But there's one thing that I've struggled with for the last few years. We used to be really good at this, and we've gotten not really good at this in this community as a whole. And that's some of the foundational components of tourism. And what I mean by that is the CRM or the customer leads model. And, you know, there was some, to put it nicely, there was some politics that got involved in it, which was ridiculous. But we ultimately need to get back, in my opinion, to the foundation of generating leads, capturing leads, sending a valid and effective response piece, and then re-communicating to those folks. We are a small town destination with a tiny budget compared to our competitors. We do really well against them, really well, but we can do really, really well if we operated cleaner, and we have such an excellent staff right now. You know, the partnership between the contract for services that was handled with the Chamber of Commerce, there was a contract for services to facilitate the work necessary for the CRM, and the talking points to that was manipulated in this community, and that was unfortunate. But if we get back to the core element of generating a lead, capturing the lead, sending the lead quality, relevant, timely information, and then repulsing information to them on a monthly basis, and a lot of that foundation is happening now. The other piece to that is after we generate them and get them here, where do they start? It's sort of weird and not acceptable, in my opinion, that we don't have a legitimate visitor center in our community. And I was told several years ago that when Plainer Hill was built and the money was funded, that we could not touch that money. And I understood why. It was Steve knows I'm like the historian on the community center board, right? So I can't remember yesterday, but I can remember 15 years ago. And that was shovel-ready Obama money that came to this community, which meant that we had to wait 15 years to change how that use of that property would be. So I pulled my memo from 15 years ago, and I've provided that for you. So if anyone tells you that they cannot use the visitor center at the top of Plainer Hill for what you would think might be an appropriate use, like a visitor center, I would say it appears as though you told us we could. So wouldn't it be nice in our community to advertise with a relevant, timely, fun campaign that generates a lead, that we then send a response piece that makes people want to come here, and then we remind them when they're ready to travel with a nice email campaign that says, wow, I should come there. I'm actually going to book Eureka Springs. And then they drive here and they have to use the restroom, and maybe they want to use our trolley system, and they drive, park, go into the visitor center to see a smiling face who says, oh, and where are you going to eat? Or what are you going to do while you're here? And wouldn't that be just a nice way to approach tourism in our market? So anyways, I'm off my high horse now, and I've enjoyed my time here. So this is why for 30 years I have not been invited to the mic. But I'm happy to answer any questions, but I also appreciate you sharing, me being able to share my thoughts with you.
Sure. Any questions for Jack? Robert?
Well, I had that conversation with somebody else as well about the Plainer Hill, and well, we don't need to touch that building, but the land behind the building, that's city-owned. And I don't know if we would have a restriction to say, you know what, we build another building in the back. And we just funnel the people through that front door.
Yep.
Because that's a thing we really should maybe focus at some point in the near future. Where do we have a proper information center? I mean, the community center is a community center. It's not a visitor center. It's not inviting. It's hidden. People have no chance to find it. When I moved here back in 2009, you know, the chamber was at the Pine Mountain Village, a much better place. And then they moved away, and since then the whole thing kind of collapsed, in my opinion.
Well, I can back you up just a little bit because I play historian every once in a while. And if you know where the transit office is right now, is where the visitor center used to be. And
in the beginning,
we welcome people there. They learned about our community. They hopped on a trolley and they rode. And what this document shows, and I think if you dig deeper to the legalities of the current building at the top of Plainer Hill, a visitor center could operate in that location. Transit no longer needs to I'm not going to speak over. I'll let you guys dig that deeper, but it appears as though the obvious purpose of that facility could be reclaimed, and our customers could do what's obvious. Start at the top of the attraction, park, use the restroom, learn about the attraction, and enjoy the attraction.
Well, the big problem with that building, I kind of checked it out. It is super small.
It's small.
I mean, there's not even a proper office there. So, like, you could not, you know, transform. I mean, you have to expand it. You know, there's no way that you could just reconstruct the inside in a way that it's feasible. I actually talked to the lady there the other day, and they are doing some renovation because they have a problem with the AC, that the building, when there's a big group coming into the front, it gets super hot very quickly because the AC is blowing the air in the area where the employee works, but not in the guest area. And so the guest area overheats very quickly. Wow. So they have to reroute the AC air to make sure that that air that goes to the right place. And then, yeah, they have no way to expand it, but they kind of need to figure out how they can do it because that building is really very small. That's why my point is like, well, I mean, the city owns the property on the back. And if we would have a building on the back which facilitates the CAPC office maybe, or the a proper visitor center, that would be a big help. The location itself, I think, would be a good place for a visitor center or a welcome center for the town. And I can't think right now of a better location because of the parking situation.
Right.
So, but I know that's high hopes, but on the other
It's a
side,
dream.
you know,
It's a dream.
Sometimes you have to have an idea, and I mean, we will have to talk about the CAPC office very soon. I think your you know, like, your space is just not feasible for the many people you have, and I don't know how to work. You work in there. I mean, you're like in a chicken coop, and I know you make it work. But on the other side is like, you know, you need to have your own your own offices where you have your peace, and Ty can do his work in a way that he's not disturbed by phone calls from other people, and you know, you can't tell, hey, I'm on the phone, you can't take another phone. You know, it's like, that's awful. But we kind of have to think about that in you know, the next 1 to 5 years and find another location, I think.
Yeah, something to think about. Anybody else?
Thank you for sharing the information.
You bet. Thank you for
thank you.
allowing me to.
Indeed.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank
All right.
you.
If nobody else has any questions about budget or for Jack, then we are, I'm sorry, Heather?
I just have a question about budget.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Moyer.
You're welcome. Just Jack.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. So going from January to April, food and beverage collection, 279, 334, lodging collection, 213, 696, total 493, 030. Dividing that out by 4, we're at 123,257.50 a month. We need to be at 201,621, so we're operating in the negative about $78.4 thousand a month, or at 61%, 62% of where we should be. Have there been discussions around how we're strategically going to address this?
Well, you have to consider that January through April are typically our slowest months also.
Okay.
So that skews it a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the problem with the average. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have the high months in here. July and September, October, they will outperform that number in no time. And they will, it kind of gives you a wrong picture if you go by the average, because we're not an average.
Yeah, it
income
is.
town.
It is. Looking at it by the average, it does make me feel a little worried.
Historically, I think we have the ability to meet this
Okay.
year, especially because we'll be collecting some past due still
Yeah.
from last year. So this is not by the actual month. This is cash in the door, and so
Okay.
we will be collecting some past dues, which will help.
Okay.
But the main factor that we have to worry about is the economy. What are people doing?
Yeah.
And so that's really the biggest factor.
I mean, I have heard just anecdotal things in passing in different conversations. I have no data points other than conversation of qualitatively, people are scared to spend money right now. People are being laid off still. They are being conservative with their funds, and
Just call
to
it
the
scared.
point about, they're scared, and to the point that we've been hearing, a lot of people are booking last minute. I do love the idea of like, hey, you want to go somewhere last minute? I mean, a little bit different, but my husband and I booked a last minute trip at the end of the month, and there's deals to be had. I'm not saying we need to make a whole marketing campaign out of it, but I think for businesses that want to push that, it's a great idea. And I'm sorry, because I'm sure it's in here. I just didn't see the monthly average from last year to this year, year over year. I did just want to say for anybody that does ask, or who may be listening, that, thank you, Robert, for clarifying, and Ty, this is 4 months in. It's not demonstrating the entire year.
Right.
I mean, I can give you a hint in that way. Usually September, October make about 40% of my annual income. Just the 2 months.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's just the way, and I can go back to previous or many years
Thank
back.
you.
And that's usually the time when everything explodes. They felt the temperature's cooler.
Yeah.
We have a lot of events, September, October. Those annual car shows, those annual events. Those people, they usually come back one after the other because that's their annual thing. And a lot of people, they save for that and they will come no matter. And yes, I mean, like, I have my concerns too right now with the economy, the way it's going. That flip-flopping, one day this way, the other day the other way, that doesn't really help anybody. Right. And I just hope one day that we'll find the curve, and even if I say always this, even if it goes in the wrong direction, but at least it will go in one direction, then we can work around. But the problem is one day this way, the other day the other way, and you can't steer a ship like that.
Yeah.
No way. It's just you act like like the sun. Like maybe it's raining, maybe it's not.
That's what I like the year. Well, this month, last year, what was it?
Yeah.
This, look, it's to me better than going.
And those are in here.
12th of the year. It's more like, was January the same as January last year, or February, or whatever. Mm-hmm. Also, I have real optimism because a lot of these events, including the Blues Festival, was bigger this year than it was last year. The Zombie Crawl was bigger last year than it was the year before that and the year before that. So these events are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We haven't hit that where it's maxed out and it started going down. These things are getting bigger and bigger, which I think is very optimistic. So
We may max out on zombies, but that's about the only thing that I'll see we'll max out on. New Year's Eve should be even, I hesitate to say that will be smaller, but should be much, much bigger. So I think our events are always going to be, well done. The thing I wanted to point out, and that's why I brought these two slides up here for you, our media monitoring, and I'll go back one here, based upon, the things that our friends at Madden do for us. This past month, this is actually for the month of May, they pulled in these stories from Travel Pulse, which was the best small towns in the United States for art lovers. That was a pretty good hit right there, 131,000 readership. 405 magazine, which is based out of Oklahoma City, things to do in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. In fact, we are on the inside cover of that magazine this month. They've got a nice readership. American Weekender, which is brand new, What's Your Summer Getaway? And we picked up the story in their publication, then Oklahoma Magazine. We were also able to go ahead and get their readership too. And these are things that we don't have to actually pay for in terms of media, which is really good. When we took a look at their media monitoring, though, these are things that came organically to us that just came to us. And you can take a look at what we ended up doing with things like Yahoo Live, 25 unforgettable road trip stops every Southerner should see this summer. 407 million people were able to go ahead and take advantage of that one. But we take a look at things like Southern Living, 25 unforgettable road trip stops every Southerner should see this summer too. 10 million readership, and they shared it 241 times. So these are golden for us. We're talking millions of dollars in PR that, we're not having to spend money on. And I think the one thing that we can say safely right now is we did not have this 2 years ago. We didn't have this 5 years ago. So everything that we're getting right now is compiling on itself in terms of the amazing amount of publicity that we're getting. And if all we had to do was PR, we would it'd be a slam dunk. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing right now. So optimistically, from my perspective, I'm very excited about this because every time I see Southern Living pop up, I'm going, there's a reader again. And every time we hit in Better Homes and Gardens, which we've been able to get into, Good Housekeeping we've been able to get into. So this is really good stuff. And I think that in cadence with the influencers that are coming into the market, we've got some coming, shortly. We'll have two overlapping, as a matter of fact. It's just good stuff for us, and that's the type of media that you can't buy it. It comes to us because people like what they see. So cool. It was a great story, and I'll in my little thing here. We talked about these media boxes that went out. They went out to 15 of the top publishing destinations in the country. And the people that were getting these boxes were blown away by them. And we're talking big-time writers. And I love the one at the very bottom of Jacqueline Keogh. She says, yes, the opera glasses were a fab touch. Googled an opera in the Ozarks looked super cool. Got to admit, your spiel has worked. I'm super curious about a press visit. Let me know how you typically handle these, et cetera, et cetera. She wants to come. And she's one of those big-time writers from, like Good Housekeeping and Huffington Post and so forth. So we're getting, the creme de la creme of the press writers out there that are looking at us, and that just means that, they're going to be coming again, and that's a very good plus for us. So the press box was just fantastic.
Wonderful. Good job. All right, anything else? Are we ready to wrap up? Go home? And I declare that this workshop is closed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. One final thing, Marketing Boot Camp.
I saw that. June
26th here at the auditorium. We're doing this for our community and also for members of the Northwest Arkansas Tourism Association as well. And it is a complete half day of everything you need to know about SEO. Madden will have Dylan Sakatki here with us live in person. And this is going to be a fairly substantial event. And I'm really pleased that Caitlin has taken such a positive step in moving this forward for us. It will be a good seminar.
And
I'm done.
8:30 to what?
8:30 to 12:30.
Do we need to sign up in advance for that, or is it?
June 26th, yes.
That way we'll know
Cool.
how many candy bars to bring. So. Well, that's right, we're not buying food.
breakfast.
We're done. Are we done recording? This is just an anecdote.